evidence of German smuggling of illegal migrants into Poland has come to light. TV Republika has published documents belonging to a migrant from Somalia, which were issued to him by German services. They show that on the 27th of April, our neighbours expelled a Somali man to Poland who was illegally on German territory. You have not presented any information that could justify legal entry, nor have you demonstrated any protective grounds under asylum law. It is puzzling that the migrant, who managed to get into Germany, has in his papers listed as his alleged destination Poland. This raises the question whether German services made such an entry in the documents to justify sending undesirables back to us. It is probably no longer possible even for Donald Tusk's propaganda to present Poland as a country so flowing with milk and honey that engineers from all over the world are flocking to live in Zgorzelec. Therefore, we may have an example of the modus operandi of the German services, which will be to send all undesirable migrants to Poland after receiving the appropriate notation in their papers. This document revealed by TV Republika unequivocally shows that there is a major problem, not with the individual smuggling of illegal migrants across the border, but with the whole procedure in which the government in Berlin plays a key role. According to the witness who provided the documents to TV Republika, the Somali was one of several people dropped off without supervision by the Polish services by German police, who we asked to comment on the case. The case in question involves personal information. Therefore, in view of the protection of personal data and continuing proceedings, we are not providing any information. In this way, the Bundespolizei indirectly confirmed the authenticity of the documents presented to you. The migrant comes from the Somali region, where conflict is currently taking place. The question arises whether he poses a threat to internal security. He is a person about whom nothing is known, as the German police themselves admitted. After Donald Tusk took power, Germans began regularly placing unwanted migrants at the Polish border. Sometimes Germans wait for Polish services, as seen in this previously unpublished footage from last year. However, we know of many cases where police from Germany simply abandon foreigners on the Polish side. The fact that Berlin is not going to be a pat on the back in solving its migrant problem was hinted at during one of the pre-election debates by the German Chancellor at the time, Olaf Scholz. I called all the leaders of Germany's neighbouring countries and said that we are now going to do this, and they have to accept it. They put it bluntly. The German Chancellor called Tusk and informed him that he was going to transfer migrants across the border. Nevertheless, the government is delighted with its efficiency and has not a single thought of introducing controls on the western border, even though Germany has been controlling all traffic from Poland to its territory for many months, with the Schengen zone rules counting for nothing. Poland under Donald Tusk is becoming such a pushover. Anyone here can deport people they don't like in their country. This shows Poland's actual decline in the international arena, when the sovereignty and integrity of Poland's borders can be so disregarded. This is a problem that Rafał Trzaskowski, among others, does not see. We will also get tough on the German border, and we are already acting tough right now. You would have to get on the first wagon and stop lying to the German Chancellor to get something done. The easiest way to get from Somalia to Europe via the Mediterranean Sea, then through Italy and Switzerland to Germany. An alternative is to travel by air to Moscow, from where Russian services provide transportation under the Polish-Belarusian border. Regardless of what route the Somali man took to Germany, the case is embarrassing for the Polish authorities. It means that either it does not control the eastern border, or who passes through our territory, or unlawfully allows itself to squeeze illegal migrants through Germany. This shows that the German policy and the policy of Donald Tusk and Rafał Trzaskowski is a policy of settling on Polish territory culturally alien migrants, which Germany today has a problem with. So I call on all Poles, I call on all patriots, let's defend ourselves against this invasion. Let's go to the polls on Sunday and vote against Rafał Trzaskowski. The situation at the border worries President Andrzej Duda, who begins an official visit to Germany tomorrow. Polish authorities should react to this in an absolutely firm way. Polish border services, because there is a procedure that is simply illegal. The issue of smuggling illegal migrants into Poland will be one of the topics of President Andrzej Duda's conversation with his German counterpart, Frank-Walter Steinmeier. Romania's new president has been sworn in. I swear to defend democracy and the fundamental rights and freedoms of citizens. Less than a day after saying these words, the Romanian parliament has already announced consideration of a bill forcing social media platforms to remove so-called illegal content within 15 minutes of publication. The bill calls for, among other things, limiting the reach of so-called potentially harmful content to a maximum of 150 users, banning the promotion, limiting the propagation of potentially harmful content, mandatory automatic classification of content by algorithms. With just these basic points, the law is already a danger. In the case of censoring potentially harmful content, automation may prove helpless. Automated systems may not be able to accurately assess the context of statements, causing them to misclassify jokes, satire, or legitimate political criticism as harmful. This leads to so-called false positives, mislabeling content as dangerous. Fearing penalties, social media platforms may act preemptively and restrictively, removing any content even remotely risky as a precaution, which in turn leads to a chilling effect. Users will begin to self-censor for fear of being banned. As a result, the new regulations are more likely to harm freedom of expression than effectively counteract disinformation. However, this law presents many more dangers. The draft contains quite a few vague, broad and discretionary definitions such as potentially harmful content or harmful use of technology, dangerous disinformation, misleading, which can lead to arbitrary decision-making. Some are concerned that there is a risk of overly restricting freedom of expression. If the law passes, Romania could become a censorship pioneer within the European Union. After the victory of the pro-European president in the elections, Romania wants to be the EU's front-runner in restricting freedom of speech on the internet. And probably, if a similar scenario were to happen in Poland, we would also be the EU's front-runner in fighting freedom of speech on the internet. Such an attempt has already been made in Poland. It was heralded by Minister of Digital Affairs Krzysztof Gawkowski. This is an important act to protect the citizen, to give him a chance to be safe on the internet, so that illegal content on the internet can disappear quickly, so that we can protect the citizen, and, potentially, to result in serious consequences for the citizen. Abstract criticisms of people with a given trait on the internet would definitely be punishable by imprisonment up to 2, 3 or even 5 years. As is happening in the UK, The Times reported that in 2023 alone, police made more than 12,000 arrests because of online activity. That's about 33 a day. A similar situation in Poland was prevented by President Andrzej Duda, who sent the law submitted by the Justice Ministry to the Constitutional Court. The left-wing currents that shout so loudly about tolerance and diversity are the first to block the ability to speak out. They are the first to ration language, to define free speech as strictly as possible. This is a repressive, draconian law. It resembles in its essence all those things that went on in the dark times of communism. This law should be called On the Repression of the Polish Nation.
To jest ustawa, która powinna się nazywać o represji narodu polskiego.
In a recent interview after the first round of Poland's presidential election, centre-left pro-European presidential candidate Rafał Trzaskowski straightforwardly admitted that he would sign a law introduced recently that would be similar to the one in Romania. If you were president and not President Andrzej Duda, would you sign this law on hate speech, which was referred to the same by Adam Bodnar? I'm in favour of there being no hate speech. But this particular law that President Andrzej Duda did not sign a few months ago, would you sign it? I've said that I'm in favour of stricter laws on this issue. But would you have signed it? Yes. This risk is very high. Tusk's coalition and also Trzaskowski, who is his deputy, directly say that these tools will be widely used. Trzaskowski's rival candidate, Karol Nawrocki, has promised he'd veto the law. I would never sign something like that, especially since the ideological catalogue that wants to be attached there would cause many thousands of people watching us today to be charged. On the 1st of June, voters will decide not only who will become Poland's president, they will also decide whether the internet will be censored.
All indications are that despite assurances from the government and Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk himself, the migration pact will be implemented. I, in discussions with my partners, rule out this kind of scenario that Poland has to do something because the migration pact says so. The Prime Minister repeats these words like a mantra during the presidential campaign. However, it is not words but actions that count. Actions unequivocally indicate that Poland will not be excluded from the jurisdiction of the EU pact because of the admission of 2 million Ukrainians fleeing the war. Facts are against those in power. Not long ago, a delegation from the EU Agency for Asylum came to Poland. At its head was the executive director, Nina Gregori. She met with the top management of the Office for Foreigners. The agency admitted that the purpose of the meeting was to discuss the implementation of the pact. Discussions included implementation of the pact, contingency planning, and training. We appreciate Poland for their continued commitment and cooperation, recognizing them as a valuable partner in strengthening the European Union's asylum system. Work is underway to accelerate the Migration Pact in our country, and integration centers for foreigners are being built. In fact, this is preparation for the reception of thousands of migrants as part of the Migration Pact. Also, the website of the Office for Foreigners has posted information about the meeting. The meeting began with a presentation on the responsibilities of the Office for Foreigners and a discussion of the migration management system in Poland. This was followed by a presentation on issues related to the granting of international protection and social assistance during the procedures. There is more evidence that the Migration Pact is in force. The foreign press is writing about it. French daily Le Monde has revealed that the European Commission, led by Ursula von der Leyen, has deliberately reduced political pressure on Donald Tusk. All this to avoid discouraging Polish people to vote for the deputy head of the Civic Platform, Rafał Trzaskowski. Von der Leyen knows how to do what's necessary behind the scenes, if necessary to help the pro-European camp, whose opponents at a time of rising nationalism have the wind in their sails. Rejection of the Asylum Migration Pact will only be possible until the elections, or at the latest until the end of the presidency. An informal meeting of European Union interior ministers was held in Warsaw in late January. A spokesperson for the German Interior Ministry admitted that the ministers were in agreement on the early introduction of the Migration Pact. Speeding up the procedure for implementing the Migration Pact right after Rafał Trzaskowski's possible win is very realistic. This is best demonstrated by the Romanian example. The electoral race for the presidency was lost by George Simion, who opposed the implementation of the Migration Pact. The winner was Nicu Șordan, who appeared at Rafał Trzaskowski's march on Sunday. Interestingly, a few days ago, the EU Asylum Agency published a graphic on Romania's implementation of the Migration Pact. Crime has increased in countries that opened their doors wide to illegal migrants years ago. On the 24th of May, there was a shootout between a group of armed illegal migrants and police on the Serbian-Croatian border, which is the border of the European Union.
Until a few years ago, lesser flamingos had 4 nesting sites in Africa. Now, they only have 3. A salt marsh in Botswana, a salt lake in Tanzania, and an artificial reservoir with a dam in South Africa. Due to pollution, flamingos refused to breed and eventually left the famous wetlands near the diamond mine, Camphor's Dam. Camphor's Dam, a place where flamingos used to wade and multiply, became so polluted with sewage being spilled into the reservoir that the flamingos simply fled.
The big problem for the species is they will not be able to breed at Camphor's Dam until the levels of the water returns to normal conditions for them to breed. So we will be continuing to miss out on breeding seasons that deliver between 2,000 and 5,000 chicks in a breeding season. The last time we counted at Camphor's Dam was at the end of 2019, beginning of 2020, and there was about 71,000 lesser flamingos at Camphor's Dam.
Local authorities are trying to save the reservoir by any and all means available.
We are quite concerned. We know that flamingos attract tourists to Kimberley, and that one way of improving the economy and the jobs. So that is why this matter is urgent for us.
Lesser flamingos feed mainly on algae. This limits their habitat to alkaline bodies of water or salt lakes, shallow enough for them to wade in.
For wildlife to survive, or any of our water birds or any species associated with wetlands to survive, we need a good balance of nutrients in the water, and the water needs to be of a good quality.
The International Union for Conservation of Nature considers the lesser flamingo a near-threatened species, and therefore not yet in danger of extinction. There are between 2 and 3 million left worldwide, but their population is rapidly declining.